guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Ken, and today we're here to review and talk about Cocaine Bear.
Cocaine Bear.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, what are you doing over there? I never knew you had such a drug problem. My goodness. But look, we're talking about Cocaine Bear. We didn't get a chance to go to the theater to see this one, but it did drop on Peacock. I'm starting to learn about these Universal movies. It's like maybe we should never go to the theater to see them because it feels like they always drop on Peacock like a month. Peacock like a month and a half later. So
gotcha, yeah.
But yeah, Cocaine Bear. I really am kind of glad that we didn't go to the theater to see this one.
Me
though.
too.
But before we get into talking about it and giving our thoughts, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already.
Like the video.
Then like the video, like she said, and then leave us a comment down below. You know, if you saw Cocaine Bear, how did you feel about it? What did you think of us? Let us know. I feel like I've been hearing opinions like all over the place on this one.
Gotcha.
So yeah. Let's talk about it. Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, let's get into it. So I thought that it looked like it was going to be kind of, goofy. I mean, you know, a bear that, you know, eats cocaine or whatever. It, you know, just sounds kind of, and you know, that's what this was. That's what this definitely was. I am definitely glad that we waited to watch it at home because I was not really able to fully focus on the movie.
Yeah. It's not a movie that I feel like fully demands your attention, though.
Yeah, that's true.
This movie, it wasn't good.
I think we talked about how, well, I will say I was a little bit interested because once, you know, we heard about it, I had originally thought that this had happened in Kentucky, which is where we live.
Yeah, I think it still might have, but they changed up the locations maybe. I don't know.
I'm not sure. But like in the movie, it says that it happened in Knoxville, Tennessee, which, you know, still isn't that far away from us. Yeah. So anyway.
You probably got a little bit in Kentucky there somewhere.
Right. So that made it like a little more interesting to me because I'm like, oh, wow. Like, because, you know, it is based on a true story or whatever. Of course, exaggerated. But yeah, I think we kind of talked about how we feel like this movie had trouble setting the tone.
It did. So this is, I would say this is, if you want to call it and want to put it into like some kind of genre, I would say it's a horror comedy, or at least it aims to be a horror comedy. It
says that it's a comedy thriller.
A creature feature, something like that. Something along the lines of, I don't even know what you compare this to be honest. Like maybe Anaconda from like back in the day would be like if you're going for like, but even Anaconda took itself a little bit more seriously than this movie. I
mean, wouldn't you compare it to like any, like, you know, like Jaws or?
I would never compare this to Jaws.
I'm not saying that it's good like Jaws.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know.
Like a creature feature is what this is. Yeah. I mean, there was a movie called Grizzly back in the 70s with a bear.
Yeah, so I mean, we've definitely watched our share of bear films. I'm trying to think of the one that we watched.
So I know the one you're thinking of is called Backcountry.
Yeah, that one was really good. But that one was not, it didn't try to lean into comedy. It was strictly...
Yeah, that's still to this day probably the most gruesome bear attack scene I've ever seen in a movie. The movie itself, I remember just being like, okay.
Yeah. So,
but like the actual attack scene was gruesome.
Definitely a different take on, you know, bear attacks and that kind of thing. But just a little side note, check that movie out if you have not seen it. What's it called again?
Backcountry.
Backcountry. Yeah. I'll put up a picture of it.
My big problem with this movie is, first off, you have the CGI bear, which, you know, whatever.
Yeah,
there's a lot of movies that use CGI animals.
It was pretty CGI, yeah.
But the way that they animated the bear reminded me of like Baloo from the Jungle Book or something. So. Yeah. It kind of made it, and they were real goofy with him. Like he's like scratching his back on the tree and doing all kinds of goofy stuff.
You know, again with the tone, like there's parts where the bear is being kind of like appears to be kind of silly or whatever. Yeah. You know, like that from a Disney movie or something. You know, scratching his back on the tree, kind of chasing butterflies, you know, that kind of stuff. But then they would just completely flip it and the bear would just, you know, rip someone to shreds. And it's just like
limbs flying and
to go from this like kind of kitty bear to a murderous bear. It was just too like from one extreme to the next for me. And it just didn't work.
No, it didn't work because it never...
It was like watching if like Paddington had like gone and turned on
when you're doing a horror comedy, it's very tricky to kind of balance both the the horror with the comedy.
Right.
But I think that you still need to have a little bit of the scares in there if you're going to do a horror comedy. So they could have done some of the goofy stuff with the bear, and I would have been okay with it. But like you said, the fact that they went from that straight into it, like ripping people apart, like where's the menace in that? There was no moment in this movie where I saw the bear and I was like, I felt threatened by it. Mm-hmm. Even though like I should, he's like ripping people to shreds, but like it didn't scare me. It wasn't like menacing. It wasn't terrifying or anything like that. It was just goofy, and then he would like rip limbs apart, and I was like, okay, this is gross. Like there's a scene where he's like ripping guts out of somebody. Mm-hmm. But it's you don't have any of that tension in here, and I think it needed that.
Yeah, and then also as far as like the comedic aspects of it, like when it was trying to be funny, it just wasn't funny. It just wasn't good. It fell pretty flat for me. So
the person that wrote this movie was Jimmy Warden, and he has like no writing credits. Like he's worked on films before, but I think this is like his first written movie.
Well, there you go.
So I don't know how they give this no-name guy like a big budget movie that's like going to be in the theaters. It's like a big Universal movie, so that doesn't really make any sense to me. Maybe they just really like this script, but I don't know. Like the writing definitely wasn't there. It's directed by Elizabeth Banks,
right?
And I don't know. I haven't seen the Charlie's Angels movie. She made Pitch Perfect 2.
Right.
I don't think that she's really coming to her own as a director yet.
No.
But again, I think I heard some people like Charlie's Angels, the remake or whatever. But yeah, she could not balance that comedy and the horror. And I think that was mostly in her hands. So I would say that there was a failure on her part as well.
Yeah, and I mean, there were a few good scenes with the bear that, I know you said that you weren't ever really like scared or anything, but I would say that there were a few moments where it was a little kind of like, oh man, but, I don't want to like spoil anything, but there were a few moments, but like I said, all in all, it was still just kind of, flat for me, so.
Yeah, and what a shame that this has to be Ray Liotta's, last movie, which I'll say this, one positive thing about the movie, I liked Ray Liotta in the movie for the small part that he had. I thought he was good for what he was given.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't like an embarrassing performance or anything for him to go out on. So
talking a little bit about the actors, if I had to pick somebody who I could, kind of like tolerate, I guess it would have to be O'Shea Jackson Jr., which I don't know. He kind of had a familiar face, but I don't really know.
He was in Ingrid Goes West.
Oh, okay, yeah. He was pretty good, I guess. And then I don't know, the little girl,
Brooklyn Prince.
I don't know if you'd say little girl, but yeah, she was okay as well if I had to pick.
I do want to talk about a scene real quick. This could be a spoiler or whatever, but like with the kids, like they ingested so much cocaine.
Oh yeah.
That it was like so, and again, this isn't a movie that I'm going to mark against being like unrealistic because obviously it's a cocaine bear, but they ingested so much cocaine, I was like, they would be dead.
Yeah.
It was like, you asked me to suspend my disbelief that much so early on in the movie.
Yeah, there's a part where, the boy and the girl, they're out in the woods by themselves and they find, a block, I don't know what you call it, a block of cocaine. There's probably like a terminology for drugs, but anyway, they find it and they pretty much take like a spoonful, like it's a lot. Now I will say they do spit it back out, but that had to have gotten in them. And the thing is though, is you'd think since they showed that part that they would then go on to show them like high or whatever, but they don't even do that.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a goofy ass movie anyway, but then it seems so out of place. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
Kids and drugs.
Yeah.
It's just like, why do you all need to have this in here?
Yeah.
I'm not a prude when it comes to like watching movies or anything, but it just wasn't necessary. Like, because they did nothing with it. Mm-hmm. So why would you have them do it?
Well, I felt like that there was another unnecessary scene as well. With the like park ranger woman or whatever. Mm-hmm. If you know,
she was awful.
Yeah,
I hated her.
She really was. Yeah. But there's just this kind of like unnecessary moment where she pretty much blows somebody's brains out. Yeah. And I was kind of like, why? Like, I just felt like it didn't need to be in there. It was, you know, we have like this murderous bear on the loose, and we have to have her like randomly killing somebody on accident.
Yeah.
So anyway, it just...
I'd say overall, though, if we're getting into our final thoughts here,
Yeah.
this is the front runner for me for worst movie of this year.
Yeah. And, you know, it's only April, but...
I borderline hated this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay, well, what are you going to give it then?
To be honest, I'm going to give it a 1... I'll give it a 2 because I respect Ray Liotta. I'm going to give it a 2 out of a 5.
Okay.
I got the 0.5 bump for Ray Liotta. I was going to give it a 1.5. 2 out of 5 for this movie.
Okay.
It's terrible. And I'm glad that we watched it on Peacock and did not go to the theater to see this. That's the only thing I'm thankful for.
Yeah. You know, I was kind of like going between 2.5 and 3. I was leaning more towards...
Ooh, a 3?
Yeah, I was leaning more towards 3, which to me is just like... average or a little below
I just couldn't
average.
even call it average. It's just bad.
Yeah. But I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's our review of Cocaine Bear. Subscribe to our channel and
like the video.
Like the video, like she said. And turn on the bell notifications for all future videos and follow us on our social media accounts down below.
And don't do drugs. They're bad.
Don't do drugs. And don't give drugs to your kids. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.